BMW introduced the 7th generation 5 Series, coded the G30, in October 2016 before showing the world the car in January 2017 at the North American Auto Show in Detroit. The majority of the 5 Series models are built in the Dingolfing plant in Germany. However, Austria, India, China and several other countries either have license to construct the vehicle from knockdown kits or assemble the car. The first deliveries were made in early 2017 after initial design sketches were put into a full model. As soon as the model was launched, BMW designers began sketches of the facelift or LCI model to bring it in line with the later look the brand was choosing for its future. The differences between the early and facelift models should be easy for used buyers to spot, as while the chassis remains the same, the changes to the headlights, rear light design and bumpers separate the two, along with a much larger infotainment screen that adds iDrive 7.0 so the car can accept over-the-air updates. There is also the estate or wagon version of the 5 Series coded G31. This was launched at the 2017 Geneva Motor Show, and so the first deliveries were a couple of months behind the saloon. A long wheelbase model was also made for the Chinese market, coded G38. Interestingly, the standard model has gained 5cm or 2 inches over the standard F10 model, that's the previous generation. However, it is actually slightly narrower in its normal form. The M5 in this generation is slightly wider than the previous M5, and that will get its own video in time, as I do with all the M cars. Beneath the 5 Series, the body is the CLAR platform. This was a modular design that had only been used on the G11 7 Series in the largest LG form before this generation 5 Series showcased the CLR platform in the LK form. Since then, most BMW models from the 3 Series and larger have shared a version of this chassis. For direct comparison to an SUV, the BMW X5 is placed on the larger CLAR design along with the X7, while the X3 shares the 5 Series version. This will explain to most why the X3 in this generation grows its footprint. The weight of the 5 Series will vary widely depending on the specification and trim options, but generally the lightest variants are 1600 kg or 3520 pounds, and the heaviest are just over 2000 kg or 4400 pounds. The hybrid system adding the bulk of the weight difference between the lowest and highest weight models. I know many of you come to the Miles Driven for those extra bits of info, so you may want to check out a film called The Escape. It's a short film and was actually commissioned by BMW for the launch of this new 5 Series model. It features Clive Owen along with a few other famous actors and actresses. It's only a short film, 11 minutes long, and in there it features a tug of war between a helicopter and the 5 Series. Now that is how you advertise a car. I should mention that while the hybrids were popular, BMW continued the diesel options in this generation, which had long been popular models for law enforcement across the globe, and a manual gearbox was retained, although this was generally only offered on the entry engine options, and most were specified with an 8-speed automatic. A note for used buyers, mild hybrid engines enter service in 2020 on facelift models for most markets. For used buyers needing all-wheel drive due to slippery roads in winter, the X-Drive models are offered across 6-cylinder engine options in most markets, along with the hybrid models. However, some markets, including the UK and Germany, do have 4-cylinder models with the X-Drive to include the 520D model. Moving on to safety, and the 5 Series scored a 5-star score at Euro NCAP in 2017 and was then awarded a Top Safety Pick Plus award by North American IIHS that same year. Aussie, New Zealander ANCAP also scored the car a full 5 stars in 2017. Now onto the common faults, but a reminder that if you enjoy the videos to consider liking and subscribing, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can now become a channel member. First up to check on a test drive is the transmission of automatics for any hard shift, as rather than being a transmission oil issue like I usually report when autos hard shift, it appears on the 5 Series this is usually linked back to the transmission control unit or TCU suffering a fault. Some owners have found specialists that could reset or reprogram the unit, but as the labour cost of spending time to do this was high, many opted to replace the unit. Some third-party extended warranties covered this, but not all. When you get in a 5 Series for a test drive, you may not need to change the position of the steering wheel, but it is worth unlocking it and moving it up and down, and away and towards you. Some owners reported early cars produced in 2017 and into 2018 had the reach stuck in place, and the only answer was a replacement unit, an expensive job that you don't want as your introduction to 5 Series ownership. The G30 and G31 5 Series have an array of interior lights, and the dome lighting or ambient lights have had reports of failure. Fortunately, this is not an expensive part to fix and is advised as a DIY job, as it is a bit tedious and will likely be billed a full hour or more of labour at a workshop. The active shutters for the front grille vents to improve efficiency appear to have had early warranty complaints on 2017, 2018 and 2019 cars. Check these work, or a specialist may advise that the unit needs replacing, and although it isn't that tough to change, the parts can be pricey. This issue was one of the most common warranty replacements from 2017 to 2019, alongside the interior lighting, although fortunately both issues were much rarer than I have experienced reported on other luxury brands. There is a known issue on the flex disc, also called the Gaibo, that will cause vibration in the steering wheel or odd noises under the seat. It isn't particularly an expensive part, but again, the labour to get the job done will make it a repair you'll want to negotiate off a sale price, so don't be fooled into thinking the wheels just need balancing. If there is vibration in the steering, I tried to look for which years were affected, but found owners reporting it across the 6-year production run. A second issue reported on the steering wheel is not returning to the centre after a turn. This will likely require a new steering wheel column, and has several reports of warranty replacements on 2017 cars. If you notice it on test drive, you either want to get it fixed prior to purchase, or if a private seller, get a deal struck on pricing, as it can be a time-consuming and thus costly job. Coolant expansion tanks should be checked no matter what model you are buying. Check the exterior is dry and that the coolant pipes do not look damaged prior to purchase. Never open a coolant tank when the car is warmed up though. If possible, try to shine a light into the wheel arch and check the struts of the suspension are dry. It will be much easier if you do this with a car on a ramp, but as this will be impractical for most, shining a light in there and getting a good look is the next best option. Replacement struts are costly, even if they are non-genuine items. Aside from this, I did find some more isolated issues. However, the ones I've mentioned are the ones most reported. However, on the plus side, many appear to have happened early on in the car's life and sorted under manufacturer warranty, so while it's worth checking, used examples do appear to be taking care of their owners if they're taken care of in kind. Then we're on to the recalls, and in 2021 there were 2 recall campaigns that were announced for 2020 model vehicles due to battery cells risking fires in hybrid models, as production cars had found to have FOD, or foreign object debris, found in the battery cells, risking a short circuit. In 2022, a recall was made for the 2017 to 2020 vehicles for a mandated software update to correct an error in the coding which could cause mechanical failure. In 2024, there was a recall for the brake controller on 2022 to 2023 520i models due to a manufacturing defect that could cause interference with the electrical signals, rendering the brake force needed to be above the manufacturer's desired user input. In simple terms, the brakes would require more effort to operate, and stopping distances would increase if suffering this fault. Next up are the engines. We'll start with the petrols and then move on to the diesels, and note that all hybrid models use engines that are offered without a hybrid system, and so I'll cover them last and refer you back to each engine for mechanical details. Let's start with the 520i and 530i. Both of these use the 2-litre B48 engine, although some markets can also have a 520i with a 1.6 version of the engine. If you have the 1.6, it will make 168 brake horsepower, while the 2-litre 520i makes 181 brake horsepower, and in the 530i you'll have 248 brake horsepower. Average fuel economy does vary between models, but 39.8 miles per gallon or 7.1 litres per 100 kilometres is the middle of the economy figures. The B48 engine has had a few small frustrations from owners for flat spots in the acceleration that were resolved with dealer diagnostics and reboots of the ECU. Mechanical issues are limited to the coolant expansion tanks failing or the hoses around them failing and leaking coolant, as well as the oil filter housing breaking or cracking and causing an oil leak. Aside from this, owners report that the 2-litre engine as being a good choice, with enough power and economy that it kept running costs acceptable while not feeling like an entry-level model. Although some with the 1.6 variant found it to be slower than they would have preferred, and on reflection would have picked a 2-litre model. Then there is the 540i, which gets the 3-litre straight-six B58 engine that some of you may know is shared with the BMW Z4 and Toyota Supra. Power is rated at 328 brake horsepower or 335 brake horsepower, depending on the test cycle market. Ultimately, engine specification is the same, but different tests are conducted in world markets, and several owners say the B58 is more powerful than whatever the reported number is. Fuel economy is officially rated at 35.8 miles per gallon or 7.89 litres per 100 kilometres. One note that if you're looking to buy one of these is to ask an owner whether they have had any tuning, as the B58 is very popular with engine remaps or other modifications for more power, and you'll want to know what you're buying. There are very few common faults with this engine, and it is widely believed to be one of the more robust modern engines, A slight downside will be the availability, as many new owners were split between the economy of the 2-litre and power of the V8 model, and business purchasers generally avoided this as there was a hybrid option, so if you want a 540i, you'll need to be a bit more flexible on colours and specification, and be aware that residual values have remained stronger due to this. In the M550i, there is a 4.4-litre V8 coded N63, which initially makes 456 brake horsepower until the facelift in 2020, when the engine is boosted to 523 brake horsepower. Fuel economy is rated at 26.6 miles per gallon, or 10.62 litres per 100 kilometres. If you search BMW N63 online, you will find no end of people telling you it is the worst BMW engine ever and to run away with springs in your heels. However, this version of the N63 is the reworked and revised model and does not suffer from many of the issues that the 2008 to 2015 built engines have. The 2017 model will have the secondary revision engine coded N63TU2. If you buy a 2019 model onwards, it has the latest N63TU3 iteration, and these are generally seen as reliable as the Hot V design has been mastered and the revisions have finally stopped most of the complaints from owners. It is worth looking for any signs of oil leaks though. You should also be aware that this engine runs very hot due to its design, and so while it is smooth and a powerful option, if you live in a hot climate, you will be at higher risk of engine ancillary items needing replacement in years to come, as these clock up higher and higher mileage. The bonus to all this is generally residual values are similar to the 540i, so you can have the more powerful V8 for similar money, but you will pay for it in maintenance. Then there's the diesels, and this time it's just two options. First the 518D, 520D, 523D and 525D, which all have the B57 2-litre turbo diesel engine making 147 brake horsepower, then 188 brake horsepower in the 20 and 23D model, the naming dependent on your market, and then 228 brake horsepower in the 25D. Fuel economy is officially averaged at 48.7 miles per gallon, or 5.8 litres per 100 kilometres. This is initially one of the most popular engines fitted to the 5 Series in Europe. However, in 2020, sales declined as company lease buyers switched to the hybrid models. Because of that, you'll find the widest selection between 2017 and 2020 for this engine. Owners generally rate the reliability highly, although emissions equipment, including the DPF and EGR, were the most common complaints for wearing and needing a costly replacement after the car passes 80,000 miles or 130,000 kilometres. Some owners of 2017 models with this engine reported a timing chain issue, but this was a relatively small batch of cars in which most appear to have been fixed under warranty when less than 2 years old. Although all of this is against the backdrop of owners that have had nothing but regular servicing, tyres and brakes as their only ownership costs so far. Then the 530D, 540D and the M550D that most markets did not get. The 30D gets the B57 with a single turbo setup for 261 brake horsepower until 2020, when it increases on facelift cars to 282 brake horsepower. The 540D has a twin turbo setup that makes 315 brake horsepower until 2020, when it is also boosted to make 335 brake horsepower. The rare M550D is only sold until 2020, and its quad turbo setup is generally viewed as the last hurrah sunset moment on diesel engines, as its 394 brake horsepower meant that once on the move it could compete with some very powerful cars and yet cruise with relatively good fuel economy, but slow sales and increasing scrutiny on diesel engines ended the mad diesel engine era. If you want one, you'll likely need to search around Germany as one of the few markets that received it. Due to its rarity, I'll focus on the 30D and 40D models. Fuel economy of 47.9 miles per gallon or 5.9 litres per 100 kilometres is officially rated on the 530D, while most owners say they love the 3-litre diesel and want to keep it as the replacements are increasingly electric or hybrid cars. The main complaints are due to emissions equipment, although specialists do mitigate some of the steep costs that can be quoted at BMW dealers for repair. Aside from that, the turbos will have their life shortened by remapping the engine for more power, and a few unlucky owners had to replace the timing chains as mileage increased. But generally owners seem to be stuck wanting to only replace their car with another one, and so accepting the service costs and odd repair for all the benefits of the 3-litre diesel. This engine was also a favourite with law enforcement, and plenty have done 150,000 hard miles as pursuit vehicles, adding to their reputation for longevity. Now, the hybrid models, these are the 520e and 530e, usually with i-performance added to their naming. Power is rated at 201 brake horsepower on the 520e and 248 brake horsepower on the 530e until 2020, when it improved to 292 brake horsepower. There are lots of varying range figures across the world for these models, but WLTP rates the 530e as 31 miles or 50 kilometers, and North American EPA rates it at 16 miles or 26 kilometers. The revised 530e had a bigger battery, increasing the EPA rating to 21 miles. Both these models use a 2-litre B48 engine, the same as the 520i and 530i models. An interesting side note here is that BMW used the 530e model to test the idea of wireless charging, using a mat with a 3.2 kilowatt power output. Originally this was only meant for the domestic market cars in Germany, but the trial was extended and California cars may have this system after 2019. The 545e model was not released until the facelift and uses a 3-litre B58 engine from the 540e and an electric motor with a larger battery of the later 530e models. Combined power is 394 brake horsepower and an X-Drive all-wheel drive system is used. The X-Drive system is optional on the 530e. Claimed range in Europe is 33 miles or 53 kilometers. Overall this is a rare model, but some countries like the UK have a tax structure for company vehicles which makes them appealing, and so not impossible to find. Now onto our picks, and this one, it was really tough on the budget pick, but I did choose a 520 diesel between 2017 and 2019. I think that is going to be the budget pick because you've got the power and the economy. However, I wouldn't blame you if you tried to stretch yourself a little bit further to go up to a 530 diesel, because honestly, owners seem to be in a real dilemma of what they can ever replace their car with. Now, if you're on a higher budget, it's the 540i. That B58 engine, it's just going to be one of those legendary engines, and I think if you want something that's performance orientated without having some of the risks of reliability that having a larger engine along with the maintenance that goes with that, I would go 540i, but I wouldn't blame you for also looking at the hybrids. For me, I just think the 540i is such a good package, but I know for some of you, hybrid is important. I say you can either have that with the 2-litre or you can have it with this same 3-litre engine. However, if you are thinking of the W213 Mercedes E-Class or Volvo S60 competitors, why not check them out next? Or if you've been thinking of a used electric car due to their low prices, there's a guide for the BMW i4 or Porsche Taycan next.